Now, I am aware that there are some noteworthy names in Cedar Grove Cemetery, but
it's a virtual who's who of New Bern.
Yeah. And I heard that there was somebody really famous who invented something.
You're obviously referring to Caleb Bradham, and he's buried in the new section. Way on down. You come in through the Marl Gates, and you have to go way down toward the other end of the cemetery to find him.
I know that cemetery is pretty big when I walked through there.
It's a big cemetery. There's the Cedar Grove Cemetery, and right across the street, across National Avenue, is the Cedar Grove Extension Cemetery, which was built in the 20s. Added on.
Yeah, I drove by there the other day, and I happened to notice that it's right next to a football field.
How that part of the cemetery came about is kind of interesting. I told you about the 1922 fire. The theme of a ghost walk was at one time.
Oh yeah.
Back in the 1920s, that was the colored section of town, the black section of town, and that whole street along there was housing, and poorer housing, and a lot of the black people lived there. When the 1922 fire swept through, it devastated that end of town. The fire was coming up toward that section, and along that street, the firemen tried to make a fire break. Firemen loved to play with dynamite in those days. Anything was used to break out with dynamite.
Oh, yeah.
So they went up blowing up houses along there to build a fire break, and pulling some down with trains in the hopes that would stop the fire. The firemen would run in the house, put a barrel of dynamite, tell the people, you got 2 minutes to get out of here. They'd light the fuse, run across the street, jump across the wall of the cemetery, and would let the house blow up. Did not stop the fire. The fire came, swept right over the cemetery, burned a lot of the trees in the cemetery, and burned the other side out to the river. There was stories of how the cemetery looked the day after the fire. That a lot of the wooden mausoleums had burned, and you could see the corpses inside. There was a lot of the sidewalks around were buckled from the heat of the fire. Pianos and furniture lining the cemetery outside, where people had pulled their pianos out of their houses trying to save what they could. And a lot of people sleeping in the cemetery in a cold rain because they had nowhere else to go. Thousands of people have been left homeless.
I did kind of note that that cemetery looked like it had seen a lot of disaster.
Yeah, it used to be more heavily wooded than it is now, but the Fire 22 took care of a lot of that. But anyway, after the fire, that side of the street, the city council, under a councilman named Kafer, Mr. Kafer, would not allow the homes to be rebuilt. Instead, they built that ball field, that football field, Kafer Park, and the Cedar Grove Extension Cemetery. And for a while, that ballpark hosted a minor league professional ball back in the 40s and 50s.
Wow. That's good. That's quite interesting. Now, getting back to this ghost walk thing,
yes,
I had noted that since I joined it last year myself with you, I've heard a lot of talk from some of the people taking part in the ghost walk that they have experienced some kind of minor paranormal activity. Have you experienced any issues yourself in that cemetery, personally?
Well, let's say I am not a big believer in paranormal activity.
You're not?
But I have not seen anything myself. I have not experienced anything. Actually, I'm not personally familiar with the ghost stories of the cemetery. I'm sure they're out there. I'm familiar with a lot of ghost stories in a lot of buildings around town. But I've never... There are certainly plenty of people out there who have died interesting enough deaths, or who were famous enough, or whatever enough, that if it takes a shocking end or something, or anything like that, or to make a ghost, they could be out there.
Yeah, I've heard the different ways that a person can become a ghost after they've died. It all depends on how they've died, what manner. But
there are certainly interesting people and interesting death stories. I mean, there was John Stanley, who's buried. When you first go in the Marl Gate, right on the right-hand side, there's a little wall-in area. That's where John Stanley is buried. He was a man who killed one of the signers of the Constitution in a duel.
Wow. I did hear some about that.
Killed Richard Dobbs Spade. Richard Dobbs Spade's buried in another place. And William Gaston, a very famous Catholic judge from this town, a state Supreme Court judge, is buried in there. Bayard Wooten, a famous photographer from 1900 on up to about 1950 when she died, is buried in there.
You'd mentioned Richard Dobbs Spate. I noticed that one of New Bern's famous landmarks is named after him. The bridge going from New Bern to James City.
Yes, and if you go across that bridge and get down onto Matamore Lane, his burial plot is right down there. It was a little walled-in burial plot for him. The Civil War Memorial in there, where many of the battlefield dead from the Battle of New Bern are in there. There's a Confederate general in there. There is what else is there? There's one stone that has always appealed to me. Makes me kind of sad to look at it. It's just one stone and just lists of children in a family who have died within 2 or 3 years of each other, obviously of sicknesses. And there's like 7, 8, 9 children. It's like the family lost every child they had.
Now you're talking about this is in Cedar Grove. I did note that too. That there were a lot of children, especially toddlers. I was going through there, and I had noted that some didn't even make it to a month.
It was a time of high mortality.
Yeah.
And New Bern, being a coastal town, was known for sickness and death in the summers. If you had any money at all, you didn't live in New Bern during the summer. You headed to the hills.
Wow.
And you lived there in the colder seasons.
It's no wonder that people have said that they've experienced something in that cemetery.
Yeah.
But I guess it goes without saying that you've heard all the rumors about different.
I know there are stories, but I myself have never experienced any.
But it wouldn't be. I guess there's a lot of people that wouldn't be opposed to going in there after dark to see if they could find something.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. Some homeless people tend to hang out there at night and so on. And things like that, but occasionally you can go in there during the day and you'll find empty wine bottles and in bags around certain areas and things like that sometimes.
I have seen remnants in there of people who have spent plenty of time in there. Well, thanks for your time, Bill.
Okay.
This has been good.
Thanks for hearing me.
Whether or not you're going to experience any paranormal activity in the cemetery is anybody's guess. I suppose the amount of activity involving the paranormal may vary from person to person. Although I haven't experienced anything myself yet, others I've heard expressing what they've experienced never ceases to intrigue me, and it raises my hope that there will be more, and hopes it will never stop. After seeing television shows about people exploring the paranormal, whether it is actual ghost hunting or certain groups challenging each other with specific types of evidence, it all caught my interest. Malevolent spirits. Benevolent spirits. To be honest, on the whole, you risk your own safety. Physically, spiritually, and psychologically. You put yourself at risk going after any type of paranormal entity. I bet you're wondering if I'm even tempted to stay out here in the cemetery after dark. Well, I won't lie and say that I'm not. What is also remarkable is that, with the paranormal, it is highly unpredictable. You never know, they may be trying to convey a message. To be honest, a paranormal experience can happen anytime, any place, anywhere. Not just at night and not just at a cemetery. Somewhere, at some point in time, someone is having, or will have, a paranormal experience. Where do you think you will be, if and or when you have a paranormal experience? Are you going to be ready, whether or not you have experienced the paranormal? It is, indeed, an experience never to be forgotten.